Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Aisha Subarkash. 20 years after they were ousted, the Taliban is once again in control of Afghanistan. The swift pace of their advance came as a surprise to the world. The group has promised to maintain stability, set up an inclusive government, and uphold women's rights. But Western governments are still reluctant to define where they stand with the new leaders of the country and whether the Taliban rule will be any different this time around. Ludovica Brignola has more on how the group came to power once again.
Thanks to our military and our allies and the brave fighters of Afghanistan, the Taliban regime is coming to an end.
We've had very successful negotiations. We think they'll be successful in the end. The other side's tired of war. Everybody's tired of war.
Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not.
Over the course of the Afghanistan war, American presidents have delivered an uninterrupted streak of failed prophecies. In 2001, the US invaded the country as a direct response of the attacks of 9/11. Its aim was to counter terrorism and capture Osama bin Laden, who was thought to be behind the attack and suspected of living in Afghanistan under the protection of the Taliban. But after nearly 20 years of conflict, the war had claimed more than 100,000 lives and it had cost America more than $2 trillion. The US thought it had brought the Taliban threat under control. That's why, in February last year, former US President Donald Trump struck a peace deal with a group in which it agreed to cut ties with al-Qaeda in return for US troop withdrawal. It depended on the Afghan military's ability to keep the balance of power as the country began to rebuild. In April, President Joe Biden announced the withdrawal would commence on May 1st. 2 months on, and the Taliban has regained control of the whole country, with the Afghan National Army putting up little resistance. During its 5 years in power, the Taliban was criticized for enforcing its own interpretation of Islamic law, barring women from working or studying, and carrying out public executions for those found guilty of murder and adultery. But starting with its relatively peaceful recapture of Kabul, the Taliban has been keen to show a different face to the world. The group has said it doesn't hold any grudges against foreign powers, calming fears that its returns to power could provide a safe harbor for terrorists. It's also urged women to join its government.
The issue of women is very important. The Islamic Emirate is committed to the rights of women within the framework of Sharia. Our sisters, our men have the same rights. They will be able to benefit from their rights. They can have activities in different sectors and different areas on the basis of our rules and regulations.
But this hasn't calmed European officials who accuse the US of miscalculating the Taliban threat, with some regarding the withdrawal from Afghanistan as a mistake of historic magnitude. But whether the Taliban will prove them wrong and keep faith to their promises remains to be seen. Ludovica Brignola, Straight Talk.
And to discuss further where the country is headed, joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Omar Samad. He is a former Afghan ambassador. Also from Washington, D.C., Richard Outzen, who is a retired military officer and former US diplomat. And from Ankara, Ahmet Uysal. He is a director at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies and professor of political sociology in Istanbul University. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Omar, Taliban is back. What is next, and how do you think they'll rule the country?
Yes, Taliban is back after 20 years. I think that the next few days are going to be telling as the Taliban try to consolidate power, meaning that on one hand, I think they want to take care of any lingering security issues that may exist in Kabul, in other provinces. They do understand that there is one small area north of Kabul in the Panjshir Valley that is still not under their control. At the same time, they are trying to take a bit of time to find out what kind of a political structure needs to be put in place. They are having discussions and consultations, as they call them, with Afghan leaders who are still inside Afghanistan, like President Karzai, ex-President Karzai, Dr. Abdullah, and others. This is, in my view, a good sign, but we do not know yet what the result may be, or is the next political arrangement or setup in Afghanistan going to be inclusive? Is it going to be purely Taliban? Is it going to include other political and social constituencies of the country or not?
Yes.
That is something that will need to be figured out in the next few days as soon as the Taliban feel that the time has arrived.
So there's no precise timetable for that. Richard, do you believe that the Taliban has the capacity to rule a country, and do you believe that they have the institutional support?
Well, on the first part, I think the Taliban has never shown the ability to manage or govern a nation the size of Afghanistan. And this doesn't just go to technical capacity in terms of the ability to deliver services and to manage programs, to conduct diplomacy, or even to provide security. It's to have a central governing authority that is widely respected and listened to throughout the country. Now, they have an ideological consolidation that was lacking with the government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan under President Ghani and before him President Karzai. So they have that advantage of ideological sameness, I suppose, or uniformity, but they have no managerial capacity to speak of, and that's going to be a problem. They're going to have to make some compromises. If we look at the history of Islamic governments or would-be Islamic governments across the region in the Middle East and South Asia, they struggle when they actually come into power. As to the second part of the question, time will tell. There's all sorts of factors that are still playing out. This is still very fresh. There are many elements of the political equation that can either consolidate in opposition to the Taliban or can make a compromise, as the ambassador was saying. People such as President Karzai.
Yeah. So, Ahmed, what's your take on that? I mean, the Taliban has been talking about this inclusive government. Will this happen? And why would they share the power, which they had, hardly won?
I think they have to establish a conciliatory government or consensus government, because Afghanistan is very much, destroyed, and a lot of different factions, a lot of international interventions also, many role by Russia, by Pakistan is the main supervisor behind Taliban, but there are many big power interests in the region, also in the country. So Taliban has to find a way to move forward with a lot of problems waiting ahead, and also they need kind of legitimacy to function as a legitimate, as a normal government, and many questions to address this. Of course, they have a lot of challenge to provide security first, and then try to improve this destroyed country that was for like 40 years. So it's a very almost mission impossible to achieve. So they have to find a more broad platform to maintain their.
Yes, we're going to see if they're going to manage to form a broad-based government. But in the meantime, Omar, how will the economy survive since the U.S. froze almost $10 billion of the Afghan central bank's funds, and some European governments halted the flow of aid? So how does it look like now?
Right now, it does not look very promising. As you said, a lot of the money input has been frozen or put on hold. And I think that there may be a political reason for that, and that is exactly what we have been talking about, is to send a message to the Taliban that this is not the 1990s, things have changed. And I think they are cognizant of that. They keep talking about this, and they pledge, and they have been pledging that they would like to see an inclusive government. They want to discuss the future of Afghanistan with other Afghans. There are Afghan teams right now in Pakistan, interestingly enough, who have spent several days there discussing the future of Afghanistan, who represent the Tajik, Uzbek, and Hazara minorities. And in Kabul, as we have seen, they have held discussions with former leaders or people who matter in Afghanistan. So the economy is going to very quickly become a challenge. Livelihoods, jobs, people needing basic services. And then the whole humanitarian challenge that Afghanistan still continues to, whether it's the pandemic or whether it's poverty overall. Mr. Ghani left the country actually very broke and very broken both ways. The 90% of Afghans live with $2 or less per day. This is when Afghanistan receiving billions of dollars of international aid, and now that international faucet is being closed, and the Taliban are going to have to really move very fast on governance issues, on making sure that professionals and technocrats and experts are brought into the picture, if that's possible. That will very much depend on what kind of political structure is put in place.
So, Richard, how reliable is the Taliban? Do you believe that they have really changed in the last 2 decades? And how do Taliban's moderate statements, let's say, match with the realities on the ground?
I don't trust them. I think that they have changed tactically, but not fundamentally. They have stated that they will bring Sharia governance to Afghanistan. They're going to rename the state as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. They have a very different and very restrictive view of the role of women in the society. We're very concerned about that. And for that reason, I think withholding money, as you discussed, the international community is smart to do that. I also think we would be smart to provide whatever support we can to the non-Taliban remaining political forces in Afghanistan, because this is a movement that will not make compromises unless they have to. Any compromises they advertise are cosmetic and designed to get the lifeblood of the economy, which is international aid, flowing again. But the vision they have, which, by the way, includes support to other what we'll call resistance movements, or in some cases terror movements like Al-Qaeda, that's not changed. The leopard has not changed its spots.
Okay. So, Ahmed, Taliban leadership says that they will not harm people. So, does Taliban have full control over its fighters in other parts of the country, especially the rural parts? I mean, will they be able to check on every wrongdoing?
They can. They have, I think, a strong network that's especially covering the whole rural area. And just to come back to the main point, is Taliban capable of reforming itself? I think they can and they have to, because some of the things that comes, radical discourse comes in the Taliban discourse is because of backwardism and the destruction that came, out of these 40 years of fighting and poverty and misery they are going through. And these things might change when development comes, when jobs, people begin to believe in education and better treatment, etc., and respect. And this we need to give them maybe chance to prove themselves. Of course,
yes.
we will be watching, but I think some of the backwardness comes from these fightings and destruction, and we can maybe we will be observing what they do actually, and what they say, but looks like there is a room for kind of opening.
Okay, so Omar, in the beginning you briefly mentioned, but what do you make of the resistance led by the son of late Ahmed Shah Massoud in Panjshir Valley to the north of capital Kabul? What's the significance of this resistance, and is it likely to get any support?
Well, I think initially it's a knee-jerk reaction. Of course, nobody foresaw what would happen in Kabul with Ghani fleeing, and then a few of his associates going to the north to put up a resistance. So it's very new. It's going to take time and effort, but also more than anything else, it's going to take political and military skills. Ahmad Shah, his father, the father of Ahmad Massoud, was a very different person. He was a very organic fighter and mujahid and resistance leader who grew up in the ranks from the days when he was a teenager, and so today's situation is very different. there may be some skill sets that they could use. But I think overall, if you even look at the map, the Panjshir, yes, is protected in some ways, but they are totally surrounded. And so it's going to be very difficult, even for logistical purposes, for them to be able to sustain this. But it could also be a political pressure point, meaning that maybe at some point they will be seeking some kind of political arrangement with the Taliban, and this is their way of trying to open a channel of dialogue, like others have in Kabul and other places with the Taliban.
If the Taliban is sincere about forming a, broad-based government, maybe it might work. So, Richard, on the other hand, what do you make of the world leaders scrambling over how to deal with the Taliban? What's at stake for them? For example, do they really care for the human rights or Afghanistan functioning as a normal state, or they're more worried of a refugee influx? What's your take on that?
Well, I have a pretty jaundiced view of most politicians in the West and most politicians in general, which is that first and foremost, they are concerned about domestic constituencies and their own voters. So I think they're worried about impacts in Europe, primarily, as you say, of new immigrant influx. I think they are genuinely concerned about human rights because their constituents are concerned about human rights. But here's the main struggle for the West, and this includes the United States, is you can't fix human rights or make progress on them or stability in these countries unless you go and do the hard work. And that hard work can be military, it can be political, maybe it means engaging with the Taliban, but also using sticks as well as carrots, putting pressure. And what we see in the United States, and to some extent in the West, is a desire not to engage, not to send forces, and frankly, not a lot of appetite to fix the countries, and Afghanistan's not the only one, that are destabilized in this way. So the question for Europe and the United States is exactly this. Will you put your money where your mouth is? And will you make the hard efforts to stabilize on the ground? And I think what your other speakers have suggested, which is a need for a political process, is going to need external support. So we'll see. We'll see if it's just words for the domestic audience, or if they're willing to make the political and military capital and economic necessary to forge compromise.
So across Europe, officials have reacted with a mix of disbelief and a sense of betrayal. So, Ahmet, will failure in Afghanistan weaken America's alliances, or they are now more dependent to one another?
Yes, I think, American or Western or NATO failure in Afghanistan already weakened their image and their capability also helping nations, also playing a constructive role. If America spend, a fraction of maybe 1/10 of the money that they spend just for the infrastructure and for development, the situation would be a lot different today. But the country is destroyed, and they need external support too, but they don't need external conflict over Afghanistan. We don't want Afghanistan to turn into a global power struggle arena, and this would be very disastrous, if one try to use it against the other, would be very dangerous and very harmful. But if the West hesitate a lot to support Afghanistan, I think China and maybe Pakistan politically, etc., they can steal Afghanistan from them, and they can, Afghanistan would be their ally, as like Pakistan now turn into a Chinese ally if they be reluctant or hesitant to support the stability and development in Afghanistan. I think they might lose more than today.
So, Omar, what's going to happen to thousands of Afghans who have helped American forces on the ground for 2 decades? Biden, because has sparked a refugee crisis, and should he help Europe to bear the cost?
Well, it's not just Europe. Initially, it's many other countries that suffer as a result of this, but this is a temporary problem. I think it will be resolved within days, hopefully. It's something that obviously has attracted a lot of attention, but I think that there are much bigger issues that need to be tackled in Afghanistan. There are a lot of lessons to be learned from the last 20 years, that the military option doesn't work very well in Afghanistan. We should have gone to a political diplomatic option much earlier, and we should have done it earnestly, not like the way Mr. Ghani did, which was to basically sabotage the peace process in order to stay on in power under the name of democracy and so on and so on, so forth. So I think right now the Taliban have a huge challenge on the ahead. They need to put the country back together with the help of other Afghans. If they do it just under a Taliban banner, it may not be that easy. But there's an opportunity, and we need to give Afghans a bit of space and a bit of time, but at the same time, we cannot abandon them. Abandonment has repercussions, as we have seen in history, and so we need to stay with them and use sticks and carrots where it's needed. But the military option is over. We saw that it devastated Afghanistan. It didn't accomplish anything, and it turned the Afghan people against a military presence that became lethal and hurt the Afghan people.
Okay. So, Richard, as a former military officer, why do you think Biden is not owning up to the chaos aftermath the withdrawal? And why do you think the Kabul airport hasn't been secured yet? And didn't the U.S. have any plans to prevent U.S. equipment from falling into the hands of Taliban?
So there's a conundrum about the equipment, because if you, for instance, I've heard people say, well, when we leave or when we left, we should have either destroyed the equipment or brought it out with us. But in fact, our assessments indicated that the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, ANDSF, were strong enough to withhold or withstand attacks from the Taliban for at least months and perhaps longer. So there were certainly people, it seems, internal to the government and external who doubted that that would happen. I think the key point is that most Americans thought, and most Western observers thought, at least that were not in government, that at a minimum, the U.S. government would provide some air support and some additional logistics and contract support to the Afghan military. Had they done so, then the equipment would not have been captured because the Afghan forces would have continued fighting. Sometimes it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I think in this case, the speed, the decision was taken to do this very, very quickly.
Yes.
And I think that was a mistake. I think that people generally understand that now. Why President Biden has not owned up to that, why he has not admitted a mistake, has to do a little bit with the nature of U.S. politics. And you never want to be seen as owning a mistake or having committed a mistake. But it's very clear to everyone that that was a mistake. And it was the how, not the what.
Okay, so Ahmet, Turkey says it is still prepared to protect Kabul airport despite the Taliban takeover. What's your take on Turkey's position? What kind of a role Turkey could play in securing the Kabul airport and help restore peace in the region? Does it bear any risks for you?
Yeah, it does bear some risk, but as we learned from, couple of days chaos, the Kabul airport is not stabilized yet, is not secured completely, and there is a need for better management of the airport and also securing the environment. I think Taliban government or maybe concessionary government will ask Turkey, but I think away from the security and military aid, Turkey can provide a lot of financial support, aid, technical capacities, institutional building or reforms, etc. Turkey can provide a lot to stabilize Afghanistan technically, and can provide also even financial aid to meet some of the urgent needs of the Afghani people.
Omar, would you agree with Taliban welcome Turkey? Because just recently, a Taliban spokesperson said the infrastructure has collapsed, so Turkey might help us rebuild that. What's the mode in Afghanistan?
I think that the Taliban, according to what they have said so far, and they haven't said much, are going to be receptive to as much assistance, technical or otherwise, from as many countries as possible. They understand, I think, that Afghanistan has many needs, that a lot of aid in the past has been wasted, and that corruption really hurt the country really badly. And the government, the previous government, lost the trust of the people. Democracy was undermined, and I think now Obviously, we don't expect the same kind of democracy, but they have to give space to the Afghan people, and they have to build relationships outside. And there is a need for international engagement, positive and constructive international engagement. And I think Turkey can definitely play a very important role in that case.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Aisha Suberker. If you've got any comments, follow us and tweet us at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.